Okay, hi everyone. Look, just in terms of you're struggling with, should I put this here, should I put this there, and it is not an exercise in devising your optimal algorithm for promotion. I hope that at the bottom of all of this is a strong philosophy in your commitment to integration, your commitment to application, and you're not just sitting there, spilled out all your activities on the floor and just try and find out how to allocate them. And it does come across in an application, your emotion about this field. So if you can step back and not see this as an exercise of adding up, but try and find yourself in these criteria, or better even align yourself with these criteria as you live up to your next promotion, then I think that's much better. And it's felt, we feel it. We feel how honest you feel about what you've done, and I'm sure you feel rather sheepish about some of your allocations. All right. So this is a category that I'm very happy that the new criteria have put this in very deliberately. In the past, it was the old service category, which meant I was alive when I was a member of this committee, and we've changed it quite a bit. We want to distinguish between citizenship, which is how you do things, how you do everything in your working life, and leadership, which means how you've led innovation and change in the university. And the group that put this together feels really strongly that is one of the most important traits that we want our staff to have. And we want you to be active in this sense, in this space, and we want you, again, to align yourself with the university. And it's all about the values. It's about the values of the university, and there are not many. There's only 3, and they're very broad. It's the value of scholarship, integrity, and empowerment. And I'd be surprised if not every one of us can find our own personal values overlap with those values to some extent. And so we make it very important. We make it important that we say everyone has to score in this, but we recognize different levels have different activities and you need maturity for some of this activity, and we're not expecting level Bs to be, incredible leaders of pulling the whole university behind them. So the kind of activities, and with all these dot points, this is not exhaustive. This is what we thought could go into this. If there's other activities that we haven't thought of that you think fit very well, you're more than welcome to add this to your promotion criteria. Demonstration and modeling the university values of scholarship, integrity, and empowerment through your everyday behavior and conduct. This is really your narrative. This is how you explain, how you go about your teaching and how you go about your research that reflects those values. In your teaching, are you empowering your students to design their learning, or are you not empowering your students to design their learning, for example? The service and contribution to the university here, the key word is the active service. We've all been that member on that committee that did their email, right? I certainly have. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for many committees that you've been on. We're looking for what have you done on those committees? What was your active service? What have you contributed and innovated at that committee? Mentoring and development of the other staff and yourself. So we're looking for a long practice, a long history of having mentors, of having those conversations, of maybe some stories about how you've changed the way you're doing based on these conversations with mentors, and equally being a mentor. And we're looking for stories about how you've approached your mentorship of others and what you feel you've achieved with that. And of course, it's a reflective practice. Some of us are very literal about this and have a diary and write in their diary, and I think that's marvelous. I also have a blog, not published. I'm not referring to Eurovision blog, but when I have conversations that I know that are going to be difficult with people because maybe they're around performance or not, I then take some notes on this, and the notes are more about how have I tried to communicate the point, how do I think this other person has understood it, how did they react that makes me gauge whether they've understood it. So I keep a little diary, particularly with difficult conversation, and I can explain. That's a story I can tell. Obviously, I'm not going to, include the details, but that's a way where you can tell the story of how you reflect. Or you have a physical diary. That happens. Okay. I think I covered some of this. So the citizenship is how do you go about your life? How do you go about your working life? How do you do things? What sort of person are you? And how does this reflect in your teaching, your research, your integration, your application? Leadership, it's really about leading. It's leading people and leading change. It's not just your membership on committees. And what your story has to tell is about what have you done, how have you led these committees, or what have you contributed, what are the outcomes? Did they make things actually better? At this point, I'd also like to say that disasters can be good stories in a promotion, especially if you recognize it was a disaster and then you did something else. I think they're undervalued aspects of your university life or working life, is that you can have misadventures, that your strength is how do you deal with this? Do you recognize it was a disaster, and how have you changed it? So don't underestimate your disasters. I think they're very valuable. I've got many of them. So again, we're trying to give you perhaps some examples to guide you a little bit about how to think about it. So for an achieved, and maybe for a level B or C application, maybe a value statement that aligns with the universities, a statement about your philosophy of how you approach your work, and maybe you're a member on a number of committees, but it's fairly junior. You haven't had the maturity or the experience to really go out and be very active to lead something, and that may constitute an achieved, in this sense. Remembering that achieved is not something we expect of a level D and E. We expect more of a level D and E. So that may be comprehensive activities in implementing the values in all areas of university life. So that may be examples of how you empower your students and your colleagues. Maybe you're putting structures in place that help this empowerment of students and colleagues. Maybe you're chairing departmental and faculty committees or a research center, and you have evidence that you have affected a change. And what we're looking for is you've had a brilliant idea, so you've identified a gap, something's not working, you came up with a creative idea of how to address this, and you have led the innovation and the implementation of your brilliant idea, and then you have some sort of measure that you've had an impact, that you actually fixed something. That could be an example for superior. And for an example for outstanding, we're looking for a much higher level, so setting up formal structures that support and facilitate the university values. So for example, a university mentoring program, or an equity and diversity committee at your level. Maybe you're a chair of a very substantial unit or of a university structure, or a substantial research network. Maybe you're a head of department or the chair of the Animal Ethics Committee, or, as I said, the chair of a Center of Excellence. But again, you have to give us evidence that you have been very active, that you have affected some change, that you had this idea, that you led the innovation and you implemented it. And at that level, we may think, oh, that's pretty outstanding. So this is from my perspective. I mean, we're giving examples from our perspective of what we may imagine. Are there any questions, Mel?
Think about hypothetical examples of the disaster story in the promotion. Like, do you identify?
The disaster story was before I had my reflective blog on difficult conversations that they didn't go well. And ever since I've been doing this, reflecting on why this person may or may not have gotten this message, I feel far more emotionally withdrawn from the conversation. I'm much calmer in the conversation. I'm approaching it much more holistically.
Change after the disaster.
Yeah. I had a few disasters, yeah. So for promotion to levels B and C, I think we're very comfortable with an achieved. And I think it's also realistic. Level A is here or level B is here. The opportunities to really gung-ho lead things are not particularly available. But there are exceptions, of course. There are exceptions in that space. But I actually think this is actually quite appropriate for the superior for a level D promotion or a level E promotion for the outstanding as well. I think it pretty works. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing to say is it's a minimum. So if you're going to B and C, you must score at least a 1. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't apply for a 2 or a 3. The expectations of what you see in leadership and citizenship at those lower levels are proportionate to the level. So, for example, if you're applying for promotion to level B, one of the things that we look at is that you're engaged in mentorship, but that might be more about seeking out mentors. Yeah. And then as you become more senior, we would be looking to see, have you mentored others? But you also might still keep a mentor. So, for example, you might be a senior academic who takes on a junior mentor, for example. So the expectations increase as you go up the levels. We do have a higher bar for leadership and citizenship for levels D and E. That's very intentional. What we're saying there is that for the senior members of our academy, we expect you to be very active in leadership and citizenship. That's a very clear message, I think, from this promotion scheme. But do consider each of these categories proportionate to their level.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, in terms of dealing with categories, if you are in a situation where structurally, because of the nature of your department or your school, there are a limited number of leadership roles, and there's very limited opportunities to take up those leadership roles, is it actually possible to get promoted to those continuity?
I think you should not feel limited by the existing community structure within either your department, faculty, or indeed within the university. Leadership also includes leadership outside the university, within your discipline profession, within the community, within, all sorts of other aspects of life. So just because there is a small number of committees in a small department and you don't happen to be the chair of one of those, I don't think you should feel limited by that. It's a matter of looking beyond that and saying, well, what else can I lead? What other ideas do I have for making something better that I could actually implement? And it might not be within a committee structure. It might just be some great idea that you've had that, for a new seminar series or something. So I do think you need to think a little bit outside the box, because within any box there are limited opportunities. Yeah. Think beyond the box.
I totally agree, but be aware, I think if you have only activity in leadership outside the university because, you're leading all sorts of things and nothing to show within the university. A panel may also go, why would we promote this person who clearly is not engaging in the leadership aspect within the university? Over here, yeah.
So again, it's another question around about level E, and I'm thinking about the balance between leadership and citizenship. So let's say your personal style is more on the citizenship side, kind of collaborative, census-based, rather than being the person right at the front who claims the credit for stuff and leads everything out of way. Are you at a disadvantage if you want to move towards a level E if you do sort of score really well in all the other areas?
So the question is the balance between citizenship and leadership, particularly for level E. If you're very active in the citizenship area and less in the leadership, is that a disadvantage? I haven't seen a case where this was like this, but what I would say for a level E in the citizenship is it has to be more than being a very friendly, approachable person who is very transparent and egalitarian to everyone. You have to put in place something, formal structures that support others in this as well. I think at that level, if you're level D, ready for level E, you would have thought about, you think, okay, I have a good practice, I want to help others gain from this practice. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
Very kind of active faculty level committee work where you've got lots of ideas, but that kind of comes out in a more collaborative, conversational way, but you're contributing significant ideas, but you're not the person who runs off to apply for a big award and claims all the credit for something.
Well, you don't have to. It can be, but you can lead small things as well to success. I do a lot. I started a lot of social activities, and I would put that into my leadership category because I think it's very important to have a socially coherent department, and I lead these things. I put this in place, and I do a lot of activity in this, and we have a social calendar and all this. I feel that this is leading people.
The only thing I'd add to that is a couple of things. I think we acknowledge that there are different leadership styles, and so you don't have to be extroverted and the person out in front to score well in leadership and citizenship. And I'd be thinking about your narrative, about how you talk about your contribution. What the impact is that you've had and how you've made that, how you've sort of made some change as a result of that. So one sort of lens to see this through is, as you're getting more senior, starting by reflecting on how you lead yourself. So that would be, what sort of feedback do you get, self-reflection, etc. Then sort of thinking, how do you lead others? And then more broadly, at the more senior levels, how do you lead at a kind of organisational level? Now that might be your faculty. And what you're sort of thinking about there is sustainable impact beyond your time. And so, and how do you ensure that the way that you've led has an impact beyond, your immediate time here? So if you think about some of the examples that we've talked through, really sort of ensuring that something perhaps that you are involved in, you've led change to make things better, there would be a strong narrative there beyond your time here that you've made a positive impact, contribution, even if you did that in a sort of quieter achiever sort of way. I would absolutely include those stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ian.
Just some clarification on the time frame of these narratives. You use the phrase "for a very long time," but we've also heard that this application is about stuff that's happened since the previous promotion.
I think what you, in this particular category, what you want to explain in your story is your development in your leadership and citizenship until this point where you are now implementing at a much higher level. So I don't miss out on that previous story where you say, ever since I started here, I practiced this, and now I've started implementing, department-wide processes, and they're now being adopted at the faculty. So I do think you can tell the whole narrative, but maybe the outcomes that you want to really focus in are since your last promotion. That was over there, yeah.
Yes, a question about demonstrating effective reflective practice. Is that a case of, at the time of writing your application, you just need to provide a compelling narrative of, I guess, how that's been helpful for you, or do we need to be cataloguing reflections over time that we can provide as
I imagine for many applicants it will be exactly that, where they go, oh, reflection, okay. But that doesn't mean they're low value. But I think in terms of being successful in an application, ideally you should engage with this long before you even think about application. Think of these guidelines, of this policy as your roadmap to all your activities, and try to align your activities with those categories. These criteria are really what the university wants you to do. That's why we've put them in the criteria. We're not going to put something in we don't want you to do. Of course, there are some activities that lie outside, and it is your decision to make whether you sort of, aligning yourself more tightly with this. Because it's going to be difficult claiming activities that the criteria are not recognizing. Yeah? But yes, for many of us it would be, let's reflect a little bit. But I think there are opportunities to reflect on your leadership. If you go for awards, for teaching awards, for research awards, I think that has a lot of exercise in thinking about how you do things. So unless there's a burning question, there's just a couple more slides on preparing. Obviously, you've got to read the policy and who reads policy, right? And check the website. Talk to your head of department. That is a really important person. We have some feedback that's difficult for some staff, but it is really important conversation to have to see where they are. Contact your referees, get their consent. They have time, they're in the country. In principle, they'll be happy, but Catherine has powers to extract the referee report from them, and they won't even blame you for it. And then you draft the application, you update your CV, and so you have these 5 different elements: your application, your CV, the head of department report, your nominee referee report, and then level Ds and Es have 2 independent referees that the head of department nominates. Often they consult with other people in the department about who is best in your area. It's not the best practice for you to direct that part. They're meant to be independent. But the head of department may ask you as well, your opinion. A strong application, I feel, is something where you verify your claims, particularly with a focus on your last promotion, but don't forget your entire history, and the panel won't ignore your entire history, particularly if there's a nice path that you can write about. The evidence of quality of impact is important. Look, clear, short, succinct. We thank you on our knees for that. And also practice and prepare for the interview. This shouldn't be a surprise for you. Maybe get together with some other people in your department to do a few practice interviews. Be very specific as you're addressing the promotion criteria. The overlapping evidence, very careful about it. It's not impossible, but just be careful about doing that. I think we've talked about this. I think a good application really, from my perspective, makes me understand who you are. So don't underestimate being able to explain yourself as a person in this application. What drives you? How do you do things? What's important to you? It's more than a list of activities. You have to put it into some context. Well written, compelling, and I think it's also very helpful for me to understand how this promotion will empower you further. What you could be doing with this promotion. Okay. Oh, I've got 7 minutes. So that Nicole talked about the two committees, faculty and university. The faculty committee interviews all the applicants, and for level Ds and Es, it makes a proposal whether or not to promote an applicant, and then the university committee reviews that proposal and interviews the dean, and kind of holds the dean accountable and say, how have you arrived at this decision? And this is to make sure that we are consistent across faculties. But it's the university committee that makes the final decision on Ds and Es.
One clarification point there. One of the questions that has arisen is, if the faculty promotion committee does not recommend you for promotion, does your application still go to the university promotion committee? Yes, it does. So the university promotion committee sees all of the applications, they read all the materials again, they get a report from the faculty promotion committee, but they are not bound by it. And there were examples in the last round where the university promotion committee came to a different conclusion to the faculty promotion committee. So it is designed to be a dual, approval or review process. But it's not a gate that you've got to get through. So all of the applications go to UPC, and then it's really up to them to review it. And essentially what they do is they simply add the faculty promotion report as an extra piece of information to consider. So they have an extra document and they consider all of it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah?
Out of curiosity, is there a stage in there for an opportunity for response on that? If there's an unfavorable...
There's an appeal.
There's not. So you don't actually know the scores at faculty promotion committee. So you lodge your application and you hear the final result. But you can always seek sort of feedback, and the committee member can tell you about it. And if you're concerned about that process, there is an appeal on process.
Yeah. So process only, if you feel that the process has not been followed. Okay, for the interview, Nicole already gave you some more information about the interview. That was a bit of a surprise to some in the last round. So there'll be about 7 members, the dean chairs it, and it also includes external representatives from the faculty, from another faculty. Yeah, so there'll be someone from another faculty. I would say, if you made a claim for superior outstanding, be prepared to defend that. Be prepared to say, these are the reasons why I think this is superior or outstanding. You may get questions, as Nicole said, about the claims that you're making to clarify some of the detail. This is particularly if there was activity with the group, I think, to maybe questions about what exactly was your role. You got $1 billion worth of grant money, but there were 25 people. Are you, and you're going, I want $1 billion. The question will be, okay, but exactly what was your role in that? And so, as Nicole said, we're standardizing this a bit more. So there'll be standardized questions at about 20 to 30 minutes. And really see it as a positive opportunity to talk about your work. And I think the feedback from the panels were that they really enjoyed hearing about people's research. People in their faculty that they were unaware were doing this research. So maybe you get a research collaboration out of this interview as well.
The ECR network will be running a panel session probably in about August for people going from A to B or B to C. We've got a panel set up of people that were on panels last year from each faculty, and it'll be a sort of a Q&A session to help those levels prepare better. So just keep your eye out for that. It will be advertised in the ECR news.
All right, that's the last slide, really. Are there any questions? Right. I think you came up first and then second. Yes, please.
Is there an expectation that your referee should be able to provide a coverage of all the things
No.
that you claim in your application?
No, and how the referee knows you will indicate which areas they'll comment on. Some will say, I only know their research, and I'll comment on that.
Is it advantageous to have referees who can comment on all various areas? Or?
Not necessarily. Look, I think I can imagine having someone you, but don't feel they need to speak to everything.
And there's 4 of them, right?
Yeah. I mean, for example, you might want to give a junior referee who could really speak to the impact of your leadership and mentorship, for example. They might only be able to speak to that. That's fine.
In the back?
Yeah, I just had a question about the interviews are September through December. And so do we basically like stay here with the immigration and you basically have to wait to find out when your interview is? Or are you, can you be notified with some advance warning that it's September?
So, Catherine, when will we know the dates for actual
I've actually scheduled all the meetings now and I've picked up on the website for this week.
I don't know if you heard that. So the committee meetings are being scheduled now and they should be up on the HR website within the next week or so. So you'll know when the faculty promotion committee for your faculty, for your level, will be held. So you can plan around that.
Okay. I think there were 2 questions here. Yeah.
A question, probably a question that you like best. What's the size of these initial applications that have to go in? Sort of what's the maximum and minimum size that people see?
8 pages.
The application's limited to 8 pages and so they're short. There's no limit in terms of your CV. But again, I mean, I think those 8 pages really are critical. So we've done that to intentionally try and keep it pretty focused.
It used to be 15.
7.5 is good too.
If you're going from A to B and you are part-time, do they take that into consideration at this point?
Absolutely, it's relative to opportunity. Just make it very clear at the beginning.
I understand you can include some extra documents.
Yep.
Are they one-page documents or can they be longer? Within reason.
Yeah, is there a page in that?
There isn't a page,
There is.
but just viewing.
Yeah, I mean, it's designed to be some sort of form of evidence. Don't feel that, I mean, if you say, I got a teaching award, don't feel like you need to provide a copy of that teaching award.
We believe you.
You know, we generally do that. If there's some sort of information that you think would help, you'd attach that as a document.
Over here.
For the different categories, should I select referees who can comment on all the aspects that I have? Or maybe one comment only. So if I have referees, all of them, they know about my research, but not other activities. Is it disaster or?
Yeah, so the question is, one referee might speak to a particular area. Should you try and get some coverage across all areas in naming multiple referees? I would say yes. You know, you'd like to have, if you've claimed, say, 3 points in discovery and, you know, other points elsewhere, you'd like to have some referees who could speak to, even if they're multiple referees, you know, each of the areas that you've claimed. So you only have a certain number of referees that you can include. Try and cover different areas.
Okay. I think there was one in the front and then in the back.
For promotion to level E, we need to nominate 2 external referees.
Your head of department does that.
Not less than the independent ones. So we should nominate 2 internal and 2 external.
That's right. So you nominate, you've got to nominate 4, and then there's an independent referee process. So that comes from your head of department gives a list, and then the dean sort of prioritises those, and we then pull those.
So people you haven't published with, you haven't had supervised student with, or had grants with. That's how they're independent from you.
But you wouldn't know who's on those independent review list, okay?
So the independent ones should be nominated by the department head.
Yeah.
It's not from us.
No.
That's correct.
But if we nominate 2 external ones, can they have existing collaborations with us?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
They can.
So you've got complete control over the 4 that you nominate. They can be internal to Macquarie, they can be external. You've got 4 that are your choice. And then the 2 independents are outside of your control. You won't know who they are, you won't know what they have said. I mean, interestingly, just as a point of clarification here, when we first proposed this policy, we didn't have independent referees as a part of the process. And it was actually the Academy that came back and said, for levels D and E, we want to have some external independent referee process. And so we added it back in.
At the back?
What's the importance or relevance of your PDRs to the whole process?
There's no sort of There's no, you don't have to reference your scores or your sort of reference to PDR. Really, this is an opportunity to reference your achievements.
So like you don't have like it's not completely up to date.
If it's not up to date, you're immediately disqualified. So all please comply with your PDR process.
Is that true?
No. But it's a great idea. Now you've given me something to think about. A new criteria.
Oh, at the back again?
You have to have done your PDR proceeding.
Yeah.
In the previous year. Oh, you do. There you go. As the director of HR, I should know that. You do have to have done your PDR the previous year.
The previous year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Over here. Over here. Okay, so what do you do if you want to nominate someone who may not write an English reference but a non-English reference? I think it's really tricky then for us. No, it's not.
Look, it's an unusual situation, but it is one that we have dealt with. So in certain occasions we can translate or arrange a translator. Ideally, the references would be in English, but if there's a good reason that you'd like to have somebody writing in a different language, then we do have the ability to get them translated.
Marvelous. Yep.
Quick question on the length, because they said it was 8 pages, but it tends to default to a very small font size.
What is the font size, Catherine?
The least you can do is 9, the minimum is 9.
Don't. Particularly higher up levels are very people with glasses. They won't see you're outstanding. Over here.
Is there anything to provide evidence through weblinks? So, for example,
Yeah.
working on an external
Yep.
board committee, whatever.
We've had people linking YouTube videos of their teaching, and it's neat. If it's active on the PDF, yep, I like it. Over here.
So you said 4 referees, and then there was something about a peer and a junior. So
Within the 4,
within the 4, so there should be 1 peer, 1 junior, and then 2 senior, or something like that. Is that the idea?
ideally, yeah.
I think it's 2 and 2. It's up to you how you mix it. So I think it's 2 senior and then 2 peer or junior.
Okay.
Is that right, Catherine? Yeah. And you can decide. So some people just included 2 peers, others included 2 juniors. It's up to you.
All right, over here and then over there.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but the person that can speak to my research the most happens to be the person that I've published with for the last, 15 years. So I'm not sure what weighting a reference from him would be, because I could see the committee saying, well, of course he's going to give her a glowing reference because they're still working on projects together. Would I be better off to not choose him, even though he's the person that could speak to my research?
I think that'd be a good question to test. I don't know, as a sort of non-academic, I don't quite know. I would test that out with your head of department or the dean and just have a chat and say, look, what would be the reaction to this? Could you give me some advice?
But this person could really speak to how you do things. That obviously you're doing, you're a good collaborator with them because of your citizenship as a collaborator. And if they spoke to that, I think that could be worthwhile.
I do too.
Yeah, over here.
Just another question about the referees. If you were designing a new curriculum, could you put a peer or junior referee as the learning design officer that you worked with?
Yeah,
Totally.
That would be very appropriate. Yeah.
Totes. Done? Dusted? All right, thank you very much. Bye.